Hi, how are you all? Are you ready? Oh gosh, you know what's going on right here. Oh, hello, Coco. Coco, are you ready for some old Hollywood glam? Yeah, yeah. What about you, Jemima? Oh, Jemima. Oh, Jemima. You've been a little chubby. Oh, you've been a little chubby. Go play with Sissy. Okay, okay. Everybody ready for some old Hollywood glam? I'm all set. I even have a little bit of champagne in an old coupe like they used to drink it. Can you let me know if you can see and hear me well? And then we can get started, okay? Very excited. Next month, we'll be doing Elizabeth Taylor because she won the poll. And in a couple of weeks, I'll put up. Oh, thank you, Tish. Thank you for letting me know. And in a couple of weeks, I'll put up another poll, okay? Uh, for the next person that will feature. All right, let's. Well, hi, Walpurry. Welcome. Welcome to all of you. Let me do a little housekeeping. Uh, if you're watching this as a video replay, great. Love it. Please like it and leave a comment. Uh, but know that it originally aired as a live stream and there's live chat interaction. So occasionally you will hear me interacting with the people. All right, let's go. So today we are talking about Judy Garland. Everybody's, I think Judy Garland holds a special place in all of our hearts because of Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, right? So we're going to start off at the beginning. Judy Garland, the early years. Judy Garland was born Frances Ethel. Well, hi, Natalie. Welcome. We're just getting started. I hope you all have a little champagne for the old Hollywood glam. Uh, Judy Garland wasn't born Judy Garland. Judy Garland was born Frances Ethel Gum on. Well, hello, Sam. Hello, welcome. Hi, Michaela. Hello. This is wonderful. You're all uh, uh, showing up just as we're getting started, and this is fantastic. And literally are just getting started. And oh, okay, Sam. I don't know what that means, but okay, Sam. Well, we're just glad that you're here. Okay, so let's get another sip of my champagne. Yeah, I don't know what that means. So Judy Garland was not born Judy Garland. Judy Garland was born June 10th, 1922 in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. Uh, Frances Ethel Gum. She was the youngest child of vaudevillians. That's her mother, Ethel. She was a vaudevillian, so basically a stage theater performer. And Frances Gum. Hi, Don. Welcome. We're just getting started. Just getting started. Her parents operated a movie theater in Grand Rapids that showcased especially vaudeville acts. Judy was of, should I call her Judy yet, or should we call her Frances? Judy was of Irish, English, and Scottish and Huguenot ancestry, which is a French Protestant. And but she was baptized Episcopalian. Baby, that's her parents again. This is a picture from Judy's childhood home, which is now a museum, and I'll show you more pictures at the end of the stream. Baby, as she was called by her parents and sisters, almost never existed. Her father approached the family doctor and asked him to arrange an abortion, and which of course totally illegal in 1922 and very dangerous as well, right? Uh, her the doctor's response to this, because Frank or Francis, as her father was called, um, his excuse for not wanting another child was that they just couldn't afford it. They were struggling to get by and they couldn't afford it, and so they really needed the doctor's help. The doctor's response was uh, that he was to go home and tell his wife that she must have that baby, that this child must be born. And so it was. Baby Gum shared her family's love of song and dance. Uh, and she made her first appearance, there she is, she made her first appearance on stage at her father's theater when she was 2 years old. It was a Christmas uh, kind of a show, and little Frances got up on stage, and at 2, following her sister's act, and she sang Jingle Bells. There she is. That's the outfit that she wore on stage. Um, Jingle Bells is great. When she got the applause, it was even greater. And so when she got off the stage, she returned 2 more times and attempted a 4th time to sing Jingle Bells and had to be carried off the stage by her father, but to a thundering applause. And little baby Gum was hooked. She got bit by the theater bug. In 1926, there she is, so darn cute. There's all the sisters together. They really toured around the country as the Gum Sisters. But in 1926, when baby was only 4 years old, the family packed up and they left Grand Rapids uh, for Lancaster, California, which was about 40 minutes outside of Hollywood. They left kind of under a cloud of gossip and rumors because her father, there had always been rumors about his homosexuality. And uh, it appears that he was caught with another man. And so Ethel said, "We're out of here." Perhaps she thought that his homosexuality was geographical. Maybe she thought Los Angeles would have less temptation for him. Um, so packed up, moved to Lancaster, and there she is again. And Ethel began managing her daughters and working. She wanted to get them into motion pictures. It was always uh, Ethel's dream that her daughters be famous. There they are. There's Frank. There's the car that they drove from Grand Rapids out to Lancaster. There was Lancaster. Well, not exactly when they got there. This is probably, from the 50s. And Hollywood at that time was called Hollywood Land. All right. In 1928, there they are in Lancaster. And Frank borrowed some money, and he again became a proprietor for a movie theater in Lancaster. And meanwhile, Ethel, in 1928, she enrolled all the girls in a dance school. And to help pay for that, Ethel accompanied whatever was going on at the dance school, whatever dance troupe was on, Ethel played the piano for them. And that kind of balanced out the fees that it would cost to get 3 girls into a dance school. And the dance school was run by Ethel Meglin. 1928 to 1935, the girls were at the dance school. Ethel Meglin knew a lot of studio executives, and she helped line up some auditions for the girls. And the trio the three girls made numerous film appearances. They started in 1929, which was only a year after they got to California, right? In 1929, they did the Big Review. They did a Holiday in Storyland. They did The Wedding of Jack and Jill, Bubbles in 1930, and their final appearance together was in an MGM technical, tech, tech, technical, technically Technicolor uh, MGM short, La Fiesta de Santa Barbara in 1935. Now, up until 1934, the sisters had actually continued to tour as the Gum Sisters. There they are. You can see that's one of the billings for them. But it was when they performed at the Oriental Theater in Chicago with the headliner George Jessel. They were mistakenly billed as the Glum Sisters. Several stories have been told regarding the use of their name Garland, but George Jessel insists that it was he who was responsible for that name change. He said that the girls were so pretty, they were like a garland of roses. And so, voila, the Gum Sisters, often billed as the Glum Sisters, the Dumb Sisters, the Wrigley Sisters, became the Garland Sisters. Judy's daughter, Lorna, who wrote a book called Me and My Shadows, and it's available on YouTube. And Judy Davis plays Judy Garland, and it is phenomenal. It's about a 3-hour movie. I thought that I was quite addicted to Renee Zellweger playing Judy in the movie Judy, which is on Netflix here in the States. But then I watched Me and My Shadows with Judy Davis, and I think I almost like it better. It's just wonderful. So Lorna Luft stated that in fact her mother selected the name when Jessel announced that the trio looked prettier than a garland of roses. Judy, who really didn't like being called Baby or Frances, see there she is as Frances Garland, she didn't really like that. And by 1934, late 1934, the group had officially changed their name to the Garland Sisters. Baby changed her name soon after, and she was inspired by a very famous Hoagy Carmichael song called Judy. So Baby Frances Gum became Judy Garland. The trio broke up in 1935. There was a bit of an age difference between the sisters. You can see in that picture that there was a bit of an age difference. And they split up because the older sister, who liked to be called Suzanne, actually flew to Reno, Nevada and married a musician, Lee Kahn, who was a member of the Jimmy Davis Orchestra playing at the Calamita Lodge in Lake Tahoe. Now, the girls were on a very grueling schedule. The big rumor is that MGM got Judy hooked on amphetamines, right? But actually, Judy's mother had started giving her what were called pep pills when Judy was about 10 years old. And it was because of their grueling schedule, and Judy was so young. Sometimes they did 6, 7 shows a day, and not just at their father's Lancaster Theater. As we discussed, I mean, they played with, hi Sharon, it is sad. I'm going to tell you, this is kind of a tragic story, and I think there's just much behind what happened to Judy that a lot of people don't know. So her mother, Ethel, actually went to the pharmacy. You were just able to get these pep pills from your local pharmacist who never questioned why a 10-year-old needed amphetamines to get through the day. Uh, there they are. This is when they were playing. You could see the age difference very clearly in that picture between the oldest sister and Judy there at the bottom. And there is a billing from the Calamita Lodge, which is in fact where Mary Ann met her husband. Now, in September 1935, Louis B. Mayer asked, this is Louis B. Mayer right here, he's kind of a monster. He's actually not a very kind or sympathetic character. He's motivated by money. And he considered his players property, chattel, almost, if you will. In September 1935, shortly after the Garland sisters broke up, Louis B. Mayer asked songwriter Burton Lane to go to the Orpheum Theater in downtown Los Angeles to watch the girls, in particular to watch Judy. A few days later, Garland and her father were brought to MGM Studios in Culver City for an impromptu audition. They didn't know that it was going to. No, Dawn, they weren't. And I'm thinking that I might actually do an old Hollywood stream on some of the studio heads. If anybody's interested in seeing a stream about the studio heads, we're talking Warner Brothers, MGM, give me a thumbs up, and then I'll know I can add it to a poll later on. Because I always want your input. I always want to know who you're interested in. So Judy's father, her mother wasn't home. He got the phone call. He grabbed Judy. She was a hot mess. She really was. She didn't want to go to the audition until she changed. Her father said, "You look beautiful," and they don't care what you look like. They just want to hear you sing. And so to MGM Studios they went, and Judy sang, "Zing went the strings of my heart. Zing went the strings of my heart," right? And she sang Ele, Ele, a Jewish song. And this won Louis B. Mayer over. The studio, it was amazing that she even knew this song because it was written in 1896. All right, and here's this little pumpkin singing it in 1935. Mayer was won over. The studio immediately signed Judy to a contract. But Judy's physical appearance created a dilemma for MGM, right? She was very small. She never got taller than 4 feet 11 inches. That's tiny, right? But she also had this very cute girl next door look. And that didn't, in no way did she exude, right? And when she signed, she was 13 years old. In no way did she exude the glamorous look of most. Oh, Dawn is the same height. Then Dawn, you know, I mean, you're just a little person. You're just a petite little person. But her girl next door looks and her height, they didn't exude the glamorous look of the leading ladies of the studios of those days, right? They were very long-legged and very sensual. That wasn't Judy at all. How could she be that at 13 years old? And she was reminded often, and this is no pun intended, that she fell short. No pun intended, that she fell short of what the studio was putting out there. This proved to be a source of great anxiety and insecurity for Judy for her entire life and career. At 4'11", the studio wanted Judy to maintain a mere 95 pounds in weight. Can you imagine? You're only 4'11" already, and now you can't be any more than 95 pounds. Louis B. Mayer was especially cruel, calling her his little hunchback due to a slight curvature of the spine that she had. And he also referred to her as his fat little pig-tailed pig. Hi, Vanessa. Welcome. So glad you're here. We're not too far in. Judy just arrived at MGM and has been signed to a contract. And now that she belongs to MGM, MGM is trying to figure out what to do with her. 4'11", they want her to be no more than 95 pounds. She's got this girl next door look, and the studio is spending a goodly amount of money on her. But they still don't know quite what they're going to do with her. They're not going to let that voice go. That's for sure. They're not going to let her go with that voice. But what do they do with her? On Louis, you see, there he is. What a terrible thing to say to a 13-year-old girl. On that note, I have to have some old Glam champagne, because that's cruelty beyond belief. I mean, it's hard enough being 13, right? The studio, on MGM's and Louis B. Mayer's orders, they increased her pep pills, which they called vitamins, to help her maintain that grueling studio pace, but they were really more concerned with her weight. So they had her on pep pills to suppress her appetite at 13, to increase her energy for the ever-growing, grueling schedule. She was only allowed, and I mean, this is serious, she was only allowed chicken soup and black coffee. MGM at that time had a restaurant, if you will, cafe, studio place, where all the players and the workers could go eat. And those orders went to that lot cafe. If Judy even tried to order something other than chicken soup, the waitress would come out with the chicken soup and say, "Sorry, this came from above." Judy attempted to order regular meals when she could, because often she would be eating lunch or dinner or breakfast, whatever it was, with her co-stars, who for whatever reason were allowed to eat whatever they wanted. And so Judy, every now and then, would try to order a regular meal, and the studio employees would intervene, and she would be served the studio ordered diet. Now, as Judy's career path was being carved out for her by the studio, Judy suffered a terrible, terrible loss. As she was preparing to do a radio show, she was told that her beloved father had been taken to the hospital. And Judy begged to be allowed to go to the hospital, but was told no. She was told that the doctors had taken a radio into her father's hospital room and that he would listen to her perform. But if she dared to try to miss this radio performance, that's her dad, MGM will cancel her contract. And even when she persisted and said no, Mr. Mayer would understand, she was told, "You don't know Mr. Mayer. You don't know him." Poor Judy stayed. She sang, She sang her little heart out. Her father did indeed have a radio in his hospital room, and he did listen to it, but he was dead by the morning. Her father had been her hero, her protector, her champion, and now at age 13, Judy would face the pressures of Hollywood all alone. To make matters worse, Judy's mother soon remarried the man that she had long been suspected of having an affair with, William Gilmore, who tried, after marrying Ethel, to take control of Judy's finances. But Ethel wasn't having it. And not because she didn't want to please her new husband. Listen, Judy was Ethel's cash cow. And Ethel wasn't going to turn that over to anybody. Because every week on Friday, Judy brought that paycheck home and gave it to her mother. Her stepfather was not a particularly warm man whatsoever. He was often cruel. He was crass. As I said, he tried to take over Judy's finances. But fortunately for Judy, her mother's greed was stronger than her desire to please her new husband. Though she still benefited greatly from MGM's weekly payout. And listen, eventually she was banned from the studios. But Louis B. Mayer said, she's banned. Henceforth, she may never step on the lot again. But she will still get her weekly retainer to be deducted out of Judy's weekly paycheck. So, big deal. I mean, MGM wasn't out anything, right? Over the next 3 years, Judy made numerous stage and radio appearances and made 5 movies. Her first one, she was loaned out, while MGM continued to groom her and figure out what to do with a teenage girl who sang like a 30-year-old woman. Judy had, and this is her with Clark Gable. She sang a song to Clark Gable on his 37th birthday. You made me love you. You made me love you. I didn't want to do it. Right? You guys remember that song? Judy had been at MGM for 3 years, attending school at school on the lot, right? Which was actually like it was like a one-room classroom, right? There she is in some of her outfits. There she is with Louis B. Mayer at his beach home. There she is with Mickey Rooney, who she starred in a ton of Andy Hardy movies. He was also an MGM player, and they were really, really good pals. They also really, the public found them relatable, right? They were like these wonderful little club kids who just happened and were lucky enough to make movies. And the public loves them. The public loves them. Here's Louis B. Mayer. Louis B. Mayer and the studios did attempt to create a public image that Mickey and Judy were dating, and they weren't. Judy had developed quite a crush on Mickey, and one time when they were out on a date, similar to this one, but Louis didn't crash it this time. They were at a diner having a date, and the press was there, and Judy leaned forward and said, Mickey, are we a thing? Are we dating? And Mickey's reply to her was, I don't know. You have to ask Mr. Mayer, but I think we're just pals. Here they are. Oops, wrong way. here they are. You see, they're on the lot getting ready to go into school, the school and welfare department on the lot. They're in a one-room classroom. It's Mickey Rooney, Elizabeth Taylor, Lana Turner, and a handful of other studio players, and Judy. Uh, isn't that crazy? Look at those kids. Look at those kids. She had, at this point, been loaned out to Warner Brothers, and that's where she made her first movie. With or she'd also starred in a movie with Mickey Rooney. They were pals on and off the set. There they are. You see Judy in the back with the kerchief kind of wrapped around her hair. Rooney just wasn't interested in Judy romantically. I think he certainly would have acted to be romantically interested, and he would have dated her if Louis B. Mayer had told him, "You're going to date her and you're going to like it." But he wasn't really interested in her girl next door persona or looks. He really preferred the likes of Lana Turner and other, those other glamorous starlets that were all over that MGM lot, right? But this didn't stop the public from speculating that there was a romantic relationship between the two of them, and the studio capitalized on the public's curiosity and repeatedly put them together in pictures, press conferences. They sent them out on the road together, doing theater shows and publicity tours, and the public literally just ate it up. And look at them. I mean, what's not to love about those two? Here they are. That's Judy at Louis B. Mayer's beach home. They were often called to Louis B. Mayer's beach home to enjoy the swimming pool. However, it's said that they never once made it down to the beach, and from the time they got there, they were directed. It was the purpose it was just a photo shoot. It was to make it look like these kids were just having the time of their lives, and to make them the envy of other children, right? But it was all a publicity stunt. There they are on stage. At one point, Judy collapses on the stage because they're doing 6, 7 shows a day, and she's on amphetamine, black coffee, and chicken soup. That's it. Now, on Judy's 16th birthday, something happened that sealed her fate as one of silver screen's most beloved stars when Louis B. Mayer presented her with a copy of The Wizard of Oz. This was really a book that Judy cherished because, as she said, her father had read this to them when they were little. I mean, she's only 16, but she says, "Papa read it to us when we were little." And so she was very, when her father had died, she was very into the idea of being Dorothy Gale, in a way to kind of pay homage to her late father. Hi, Patricia. How are you? Welcome. MGM Studios had purchased the movie rights to The Wizard of Oz for a staggering $75,000, which was way more than was paid for the movie rights to Gone with the Wind. There she is. The Wizard of Oz took approximately 6 months to film. Now, that doesn't sound like a long time, right? But Judy's how Mickey runs into her at the studio cafe once, right? And she's in her Dorothy Gale costume, and they're having lunch together. And he says, "Hey, when are you ever going to finish this picture of yours? When are you going to finish this movie? I've made 3 movies since you've been doing this one." And she says, "3 movies? Where do you get the energy?" And he looks at her and he goes, "The same place that you do, doll." Pills. He was taking the pills. Uh, Judy almost didn't get the role of Dorothy, even though it had been promised to her. The studio was very nervous about spending that kind of money. And so they approached Shirley Temple, and there she is in a picture with Judy. Well, hello. Hello, how are you? Welcome, welcome. Uh, Shirley Temple was, of course, everyone's sweetheart, but she was under contract with Warner Brothers. Uh, yet, that didn't stop. Listen, it really was quite a normal thing for the studios to loan out their actors and actresses to other studios if they weren't doing anything with them. They would loan them out because, listen, it worked for the studio. They didn't have to write. So if Warner Brothers had lent Shirley Temple to MGM to make Wizard of Oz, what did it hurt Warner Brothers? They didn't have to pay for her while she was there. They didn't have to pay for the production, and they would reap the benefits if Shirley Temple became even more popular. Fortunately, for Judy, Warner Brothers wouldn't loan her. So then began the series of trying to figure out what Dorothy was going to look like. They tried her blonde. This is one of the looks. But this is the one that they landed on. Now, one problem for the studios was that Dorothy Gale was not meant to be 16 years old, but Judy Garland was. So they increased the amphetamines to suppress her appetite. They would wardrobe would wrap her and bind her breasts very tightly to her body so that her breasts and development, hi Mary Lou, welcome, so that her breasts and development wouldn't show, so she would look more like a flat-chested, pre-pubescent girl, which is what they wanted. And of course, she pulled everything off beautifully, didn't she? Can anybody here imagine The Wizard of Oz without Judy Garland as Dorothy? I can't. I can't. This was a big deal for Judy. She won an Academy Award, a Junior Academy Award. She also bought her own home, her own custom-built home in Bel Air, where she lived with her mother and her sister Virginia and that old crabby stepfather, William Gilmore. And on all accounts, it was a pretty strained atmosphere in that house. With Judy's mother and stepfather controlled everything that she did, every single move that she made. So Judy really, home never felt like home for Judy. The studio and the sound stages became her home, and that's how it would be, really, for the remainder of her life. Now, funny story. Judy says that where's that next slide? Where are you? Hold on. Where did you go? Could we have already gone through 99? Holy moly! How did we already go through 99 pictures? We are rolling. Can you believe that? So here she is on the set. The little people, the Munchkins, adored her. As soon as she stepped, there was like 125 of them, and as soon as she stepped on the stage, she said, "Hi, everybody," and she just made these little people all feel so incredibly welcomed. Um, Hi, Sharon, how are you? Uh, this little lady in particular remembered that at Christmas time, Judy had gone to them and she had said, uh, look, I'd really love to buy each and every single one of you Christmas gifts, but I just don't have the money, remembering that her mother controlled all her money. So Judy apparently took some of her own allowance and went and bought 25 pounds of candy and brought it to the set, and along with individual autographed pictures for every single one of them. And then she handed them out and let them have at the candy. And they said it looked like 100 pounds of candy to them. Judy's children loved, this is Lorna at 16 during a Barbara Walters interview. And Barbara is asking, Lorna, was it strange for you to know that your mother was the same age as you are doing this movie? Is it strange to watch her? And Lorna said, oh no, it's marvelous. It's magnificent. And that's Joey Luft, Judy's only son and youngest child, and he said he could just watch the movie over and over and over. Now, the director on this was, well, he tried to look out for Judy, okay? Judy is on this set with adults, right? There's nobody there that's her own age. The men that were playing the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the Lion were all well-established actors in their own right. And Judy, we know that she suffered from insecurity and a lack of confidence. She didn't know how to speak up for herself. She was being starved. She had a ton of anxiety. Some of the nerves, I think, were brought on, I'm sure, from the amphetamines. They would give her amphetamines in the morning, and then they would give her tranquilizers at night, barbiturates at night, to help her sleep. And so it was just constantly this. And she was always terrified on set that she was going to fall short. And she said, I didn't know enough. I wasn't even a big enough star to speak up for myself. And she was on the Jack Parr show one time. Here she is telling this wonderful story. And she says, you know, we're supposed to all kind of skip arm in arm down the yellow brick road, right? We're off to see the wizard. And she said, and these three men, the Lion, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow, would kind of, she was supposed to be in the middle with them, and they would kind of push her out. And she said she'd be behind them, dancing behind them. And the director from way up on the gap would grab his megaphone and he'd say, he'd go, cut, you three dirty hams, let that little girl in there. They would have to do a lot of takes. Because they just would keep pushing this little 4'11", 95-pound girl to the back, and she'd be still trying to hold on to their arms, singing and dancing. You dirty hands, you let that little girl in there. Oh, there is the custom house that Judy bought when she was 16 that she lived in with her parents. But again, well, her mother and her stepfather. Uh, but again, it was very strained inside that house, and any form of disobedience of Judy's mother would call Louis B. Mayer and tell on her, and then Judy would get called into the office, into his office, and just get berated. Sometimes he would berate her on the set in front of other people. So it was really awful. Judy wanted out of that house in the worst kind of way. She often went out at night. Mickey Rooney would pick her up, or some other friends would pick her up. And she would go to Chasen's and Ciro's, and she would get home kind of late. Her stepfather really didn't like it. Her mother didn't like it. They'd call Louis and say she's keeping these terrible hours and she's tired and she's becoming really, she's disobeying us. We don't like it. And into Mayer's office, she would be called for a dress down. There's also rumors that Louis B. Mayer was very hands-on with Judy. Sometimes during their meetings, he would have her sit on his lap. If there were other people in the room, he would say, you know why I love this girl? Because she sings from the heart. And Judy said, and then his hand would find its way to her left breast. And what could she do? Who could she turn to? She was under contract. As she used to joke, she had property of MGM stamped on her behind. So she just kept at it. Now at 17, Judy felt really, really hard for band leader Artie Shaw. Judy's mother and the studio strongly objected to this. Not only was Artie Shaw much older than Judy, he was twice divorced. However, Judy's many friends, including Robert Stack, Mickey Rooney, some friends that she had made on the lot, they would all help cover for Judy when she wanted to go out on dates with Artie. Judy was, well, she wanted to marry him. She was 17. He was an older man showing interest in her. She was unhappy at home. And she believed that they were dating. She really did. She was devastated when Artie Shaw eloped after one date with Lana Turner right there. They eloped to Las Vegas after one date. And it was devastating to her because she was a 17-year-old girl. But Lana Turner, I mean, she'd gone to school, right, on the lot with Lana Turner. And Lana Turner was very va-va-va-va-voom, right? And Judy had always felt extremely inferior to the glamorous Lana. And so when Artie eloped with Lana Turner after one date, it just further fed into those. Oh, Tish, I agree. Tish says Artie Shaw was married 8 times. She thinks Judy dodged a bullet. Yeah, I agree. But you couldn't have told Judy that at the time, right? Now, despite winning another Junior Academy Award for her performance in Babes in Arms with her good friend Mickey Rooney, Judy was still deeply depressed over Shaw. And very soon after Shaw and Turner's marriage in February of 1940, Judy met an NBC staffer and composer David Rose while she was visiting a friend on the set of the Bob Hope show at the NBC studios. Uh, there's Judy with all five of her husbands, and David Rose is going to become the first of those. They quickly began dating, and Rose proposed to Judy on her 18th birthday that year. It's said that the marriage was a little bit strained. I, for one, think that it was obviously a rebound relationship for Judy. I don't think that she was necessarily in love with David Rose as much as she was in love with getting out of her mother's home and starting to live her own life. Yeah, 18 years old. He proposes to her on her 18th birthday. Uh, the marriage only lasted 9 months. But there's a couple of things that happened. One, Judy was very outgoing. David Rose was much more of an introvert. So that would cause some friction in their relationship. But again, Judy was thrilled to kind of be the master of her own house in some ways. She became pregnant, and the studio wasn't having that. They weren't. The studio wasn't behind this marriage at any rate. But Judy's mother and the studio agreed that this baby could not be born, and they convinced David Rose, her husband, to the same thing. And so one day, Judy's mother shows up and picks her up, and Judy asks her, "Where are we going?" And her mother says, and David Rose was with them. She said, "You'll find out." And her mother drove her to this really kind of dingy building, kind of on the outskirts of town. And within an hour, Judy had received an abortion and no more baby. That was devastating for Judy. That was very, very hard for her because her mother and her husband, I don't think she was as surprised by the studio doing it as she was just devastated that her mother and husband would collude with them to take her child from her. So the marriage lasted just a mere 9 months. But again, it had finally gotten Judy away from her mother, who by that time had been banned. Remember, we talked about this earlier. Her mom had been banned from the MGM lot. The studio could sense the tension when Ethel would come to the studios, and Judy would just kind of close and kind of shut down. And so Louis B. Mayer said, henceforth, she's banned from the studio, but she's still to receive her weekly retainer, aka paycheck, which was deducted from Judy's weekly paycheck. So, I mean, big deal. Judy's mother, I don't think, well, I think she did like rubbing elbows with the studio and the studio heads, and I think she did feel important, and I think she did like to parade herself around the studio as Judy Garland's mother. But she was a problem, and Louis B. Mayer finally realized that and banned her. You know, she was a stage mother from the time. Hi, Matthew. Hi, thank you for jumping in, and have a great day at work. She was a stage mother in every sense of the word, but most of that, and everybody agrees, most of that stemmed from Ethel's own shattered dreams of not being a movie star herself. So she was going to live it through her daughter. But Louis B. Mayer said no more, and that was over. And Judy went on to continue making these movies. Now, in 1944, in June 1944, Judy's divorce from David Rose was finalized, and that same year, Judy met the man who would become her second husband, Vincent Minnelli. He was an up-and-coming director on the MGM lot, and by all accounts, that he was directing Meet Me in St. Louis as well, which that's how they met because Judy was starring in it. And this relationship, MGM was okay with. Um, so they were behind it, and it was very much approved, despite the rumors of Vincent Minnelli's homosexuality. It wasn't a very well kept secret. And there's Vincent Minnelli right there. That's Liza's papa. Judy chose to ignore these rumors. She said, look at her, from baby gum to that. And she didn't think she was pretty. Judy chose to ignore the rumors about Vincent's homosexuality. She said that sometimes the way he acted, she said that's just part of his creative flair, right? And she said she loved the way he made her look in this movie. It was one of the very first times she ever saw herself on screen where she felt she was pretty, and she felt she knew that a director could make or break. Yes, he did love wearing eyeshadow, Tish. And listen, he had a very separate life in New York where he lived with a man, and he was very out in the open about being homosexual in New York. Judy felt that the director could make or break her. And so when she saw herself on screen, and for the first time watching the dailies, and she saw herself beautiful, she didn't credit herself with that. She didn't go, wow, I am pretty. She went like, wow, look at how beautiful he made me. He's going to ask me to marry him. Now, at this point, Judy's making $150,000 per picture, which nowadays would be $2.5 million per picture. The studio there were millions and millions and millions of dollars that were spent on Judy's wardrobe. MGM's costume department just did a wonderful job. And sure enough, Vincent asked her to marry him. And as I said, MGM was completely behind this union. In fact, Louis B. Mayer, there he is. He gave Judy away at the 1945 wedding. After their marriage, there she is with Louis. There she is with Vincent in New York. They went to New York for their honeymoon. They were away from the studio for 3 months. Judy never wanted to go back. And she was pregnant here in this picture. After they were married, they collaborated on 2 more movies together, The Clock and The Pirate. They had their daughter Liza in 1946. She was Mary Lou, doesn't she just look so happy? I honestly, in all the research that I have done putting this together, I have never seen she'll look happy in pictures, and I'm sure that she felt happy in some of the pictures, especially some of her wedding pictures. But I never, ever saw more pure and genuine, heartfelt joy and contentment in any pictures other than when she was with her children. But she embraced motherhood like nothing else in her life. And I'm telling you, her children, even after her death, don't have an unkind word to say about her or the way that she parented. Um, Certainly, there were some stressful and very scary times, especially after the IRS began seizing all of her wages. There were times when there was no food. Those kids said, yeah, that was scary, but we all did what we had to do. And they loved their mother. And I don't think anybody can doubt that Judy loved her children beyond. She loved them to the moon and back, and she loved them over the rainbow. They were her pot of gold. They were. Uh, Now, Judy was making pictures, uh, but she wasn't very happy at home. Vincent, even though he had been coached by Louis B. Mayer on how to act and how to treat Judy, that she needed to be adored. And she would say that, I need to be adored. As a matter of fact, when one of her friends tried to talk her out of marrying Vincent, when nobody really wanted to say homosexual, but one of her friends said, Judy, he's really not the marrying kind. And she said, he adores me, and I need to be adored. Though they remained married for 6 years, as I said, their marriage was fraught with problems. Judy's addiction, she did stay clean while she was pregnant with Liza. She did for all of her pregnancies. But as soon as she wasn't pregnant and the studios started pressuring her to come back to work, she here would come the comments again about her being fat, about this, about that. And so her addiction seemed to spiral because of studio pressures and the emotional aloofness she felt from her husband. She often felt rejected by Vincent, which was most likely due to his homosexuality, which I will say later in life, he did come out and say, I've always been. He did come out and say that. But to Judy, it fed into her deep feelings of inadequacy. And after a particularly nasty argument, she had, Judy had started becoming very erratic, especially on the set of The Pirate, which Vincent was directing with Gene Kelly. And Judy she was back on the pills, and she hadn't told Vincent that she was back on the pills. But he said he could tell, right? And eventually she stormed off set. He stormed into her dressing room. He said, where are they? And he starts tearing apart her dressing table. He's shaking bottles. He's throwing things around. And he says, where are they? Where are they? And she says, you're crazy. She says, why don't you go back out there with Gene Kelly? The two of you seem to be getting along really well. Because now Judy wasn't insecure about her female co-stars. Vincent's homosexuality had now made her extremely insecure about any men, be them co-stars or on the set. And you have to understand that back then, the set was all the cameramen. Everybody on set was a man, right? We hadn't quite reached liberation yet, had we? So she had stormed up the set, and he came in after her, and he said, I want to know where those pills are, and have you seen the daily rushes? And it's so obvious, and what bothers me more than anything is you think you can lie to me. And he went over, and she had one of her costumes, a dress, hanging over this kind of dressing screen, and he said, do you know how many times the costume department has had to take in this dress? And Judy goes, don't you touch that dress! Leave that dress alone! And they kind of did a tug of war over the dress, and all the pills came falling out of one of the pockets onto her dressing room floor. Judy drops to her knees and begins grabbing those pills. And he says, "Why? Why, Judy?" And she said, "They help me. You were supposed to help me, but you don't. They help me, and I need them." Her behavior becoming erratic, her showing up late to set, um, storming off set, falling asleep on the sound stage, uh, at one point became too much for MGM, and Louis B. Mayer stepped in and he said, "We're going to suspend her. We're going to kind of put her on a timeout," right? Judy was very upset by this. She had been shooting Annie Get Your Gun. She had to be replaced by Betty Hutton. Her husband, Vincent, tried to explain to her why she had been suspended and that it was going to be okay. She just needed to get cleaned up again. Judy was hospitalized numerous times. There was no such thing as a Betty Ford clinic back then. And you never said that you were addicted to drugs in those days, even though it was the talk of the town. You didn't discuss it and you would never admit it. So what they would often do is they would have little rooms and little wings in some hospital where they would kind of send the actors and actresses, if they could get them there quietly, and kind of detox them, right? But then as soon as she would come out, she would go right back on them. But that was supposed to be the plan. The plan was, MGM didn't want to get rid of her. They'd invested millions in her, and she was making millions for them, as she always had. And Louis B. Mayer here, he's someone who let that go. He just wants to calm everything down for a minute. Judy felt that her husband, Vincent, didn't have her back. She felt that he conspired behind her back with Louis B. Mayer, and maybe he did. I mean, he didn't want her on those pills. And the plan, really, from the studio's point of view, was never to get her completely off the pills, but just to straighten her up enough so that when she was on them, she wouldn't be so temperamental and unpredictable. But after a really nasty argument with Vincent over the MGM suspension, Judy went into the house and locked herself in the bathroom. She broke a perfume bottle and she slashed, a very minor slash. She slashed one side of her throat. And I think that that's very telling. Judy had always felt that she was never treated or seen as a human being. She was never treated or seen as a person. She was just a voice. So I find it very telling that she didn't try to slit her wrists with the shard of glass. She went for her throat. Fortunately, it ended up being a very superficial wound. The wound was really just a light graze, but the consequences were grave from this. She was released from her MGM contract. It was over. Louis B. Mayer was done. That was not the kind of thing that he wanted his studio known for. Also, she was costing the studio money, and that wasn't what she was there for. That wasn't what she had been groomed for. She had been groomed to just make movie after movie after movie and make piles of money after piles of money and piles of money, and she was to shut up and she was to do it and she was to be happy about it. So slicing her throat on one side was the last straw, and MGM, in fact, made it public that it was over. Her marriage to Vincent Minnelli was also over. See, once this happened, once it was out there, Louis B. Mayer was done. At 27, Judy was twice divorced, and she had baby Liza now. She won custody of baby Liza. Twice divorced with a child, 27 years old, no studio, but per the mentality that had been drilled into Judy since the age of 2, the show must go on. A lot of people turned their back on Judy when she was released from MGM and after the throat cutting incident, but not Bing Crosby. Bing Crosby offered her a place on stage and performing to the troops. Remember, Bob Hope and Bing Crosby were very big on performing for the troops, and Bing kind of held out his hand to Judy and said, "Come on, kid, let's get you back in the game." She also continued making radio appearances, and in 1950, she ran into Sid Luft at a Manhattan nightclub. Now, they had met years earlier. This wasn't the first time they had met each other. They met years earlier when Judy was married to Vincent Minnelli and Sid was married to somebody else. Despite that, the chemistry between the two was undeniable, and they had an affair while they were married to other people. So they reunite. They're now both divorced, and 2 years after they had reunited, they were married in 1952, and they had their first child, Lorna, that November, and their son Joey followed in 1955. Now, Sid loved Judy tremendously. No studio would touch her after MGM dropped her. And of course, the throat slashing and her antics on set, and her causing movie productions to just go on and on and on by not showing up late, storming off set, saying she was sick, collapsing on set. The studios weren't interested and nobody was going to touch her, but Sid loved Judy tremendously, and he's credited with reviving her career after she was dropped by MGM. He was responsible for securing and producing. So Sid was a producer, mostly of B films, but he was a producer, and he not only secured an engagement, but he also produced very successful theater concert engagements at the Palace, and Judy broke all records for the Palace. I mean, she seemed unstoppable. Sid also secured a record deal with her for Capitol Records, and he eventually, there they are with Lorna, he eventually spearheaded the production he and Judy together produced, meaning that they put their own money into it. Judy didn't take a salary, for A Star is Born, right? And this was going to be Judy's big comeback. Judy fell into some postpartum depression after Lorna was born, and she was back on the pills pretty bad. She was depressed. She had a hard time getting out of bed. And then her mother was found dead in a car parking lot. Apparently had a heart attack. And while Judy had never been close to her mother, um, she didn't particularly like her mother. She didn't think that her mother loved her or liked her. Um, Judy kind of fell apart. But it's said that she didn't fall apart necessarily from the grief of losing her mother. Uh, when she kind of had this breakdown, and one of her friends says, "Oh my gosh, Judy, come on, you got to pull it together." And she said, "I was never allowed to cry over my father. I was never, ever allowed to cry over him." And so I felt that her tears were honestly more grief from her father dying when she was 13. And she'd had, these unsuccessful marriages, and she'd been dropped from MGM, and she wasn't ever allowed to show emotion. And I really think that the breakdown was more about, it was an accumulation of just all this grief that had been stuffed inside of her all these years. And now she was free from her mother's criticism and her mother's greed and her mother's cruelty. Um, and it just all came out. It just all came out. Um, she went on to win 5 Grammy Awards for a record that was produced. And then her and Sid went in to produce A Star is Born. And this was going to be her big comeback. One of the reasons she was given this opportunity was because she didn't take a salary. And her and Sid put their own money into the production. Listen, from the time that this movie came out, there was huge Academy Award buzz around it. And she did actually earn a Best Actress nomination. However, the movie's out in theaters. It's doing wonderfully. They're playing the movie multiple times a day to just packed, sold out theaters, right? But the studio was greedy. The studio wanted more, and they figured a way that they could get more money out of this was to cut 30 minutes out of the film so that they could then add more showings per day. Unfortunately, this resulted in the storyline of the movie no longer making any sense. Even Judy insisted, "What have you done to the movie? You butchered it. The storyline makes no sense." Yet, she still had the Oscar nomination sitting out there. And there was a lot of talk that she was going to get it. Unfortunately, what the studio had done by cutting those 30 minutes was she lost her Academy Award. The night before the Academy Awards, she went into labor with her son Joey. The studio was so convinced that Judy was going to get this Academy Award that they sent a film crew to the studio. To the hospital room where Judy was. They had her all wired up. They had cameras in there so that when, it wasn't an if, everyone was sure it was when her name was announced as the winner, they would go live and she would accept the Academy Award from her hospital bed. When Grace Kelly's name was announced instead, they yanked all the cords off of her. They unplugged everything. They bundled up all of their equipment and they left. They didn't say goodbye. They didn't say sorry. Nothing. They were gone. She wasn't relevant. anymore. It also meant that as producers of the movie, Sid and Judy wouldn't see a penny of profits from it. Judy again became unemployable. This, coupled with Judy's addiction, depression, mounting debts, including the IRS for unpaid taxes from the early 50s, they came after her for almost $500,000 in unpaid taxes. This, with the addiction, the depression, the debt, and Sid's gambling addiction. Sid Luft was a huge gambler. He loved to play the horses. They couldn't recover from this. And the pair divorced in 1965 after 13 years of marriage. It was a bitter divorce with a lot of allegations flying back and forth. Judy accused Sid of physical abuse. Sid, during the custody portion, he laid it all out there about the addiction and the pills. However, Judy won custody, and she took her children and her show back on the road. She had gotten new managers at this point. I call them Frick and Frack. They did end up embezzling a lot of money from her before the IRS could even get to it. But they got her her own show, her own TV show. And it had the highest ratings for any weekly TV show at that time. Yet after 26 weeks, it was canceled. And Judy was literally living hand to mouth, despite the fact that she had her own line of perfumes. The IRS, when they would catch wind that she was working, would jump in there and grab her salary. She was told that if she could have just stayed, kept the TV show going for one more year, she could have pulled herself out of that debt and kind of righted the ship, right? She could have paid off the IRS and everything would have been okay. Unfortunately, by the time she died, she no longer owed the IRS just $500,000. She owed them millions in interest and fees. It was just something she could never pull herself back out of. So she had the kids. Now she has 3 kids. She was really essentially homeless. She took the kids on the road with her. She put them in the shows with her. And she tried to book shows where she would get paid in cash. And it wasn't very much. It was sometimes $150 a night. She would stay in hotels because she was homeless, but eventually she'd get kicked out because she wouldn't pay the bills. By now she didn't have the studio to buy her amphetamines for her. She was having to pay for them herself. And that was cash only, cash up front to get those pills to feed her addiction. And so there just wasn't much money left for the hotels or food. She kind of relied on room service because she could put that on her bill at the hotels. But she would return from her engagements very late at night, dragging Joey and Lorna around with her, to only find that all of their belongings had been put in storage and they couldn't stay there until she would pay the bill in full, which she couldn't do. And she loved those kids. She loved those kids. And one of the hardest things that she ever did was she had to take those kids back to Sid and say, I need you to take care of them while I go back out on the road. And because those kids needed stability, they needed regular meal times, they needed regular bedtimes. And Judy just couldn't. She couldn't provide that. So she told her children, I'm going to go back out on the road so I can make money so that we can all be together. And when she left her kids with Sid, it was right before Christmas. And Joey, her youngest, said to her, but you're going to miss Christmas. And she says, I'm no good to you kids. I don't have a chimney for Santa to come down. But I'm going to go make this money. And I'm going to come back every chance that I can. And it was really heart-wrenching for her. You've seen the photos of her with her children. I've never seen such pure joy and motherly love. But she did what she had to do. And thank goodness Sid was there and could provide that stability. In November of 1965, Judy married Mark Caron. She's out on the road. Mark Caron was an actor. She'd met him the year before while she was still married to Sid. I don't know if they had an affair. But Mark went out on the road with her. But they separated 5 months later when Mark found out that he was going to be responsible for half of Judy's IRS debt. And he wasn't having that. There were also rumors that Mark was a homosexual. And in the divorce, Judy again, she used a physical abuse defense against Mark, though he insisted that he had only ever hit her in self-defense, that it was mutual. Their divorce was granted in 1967, and at this time, Judy was really struggling with her addiction. It had resulted in numerous hospitalizations. I mean, a ton of overdoses. And I think that this was just compounded also by not having her children with her. It's said that Lorna was really worried about Judy because Lorna says, well, what is going to happen to Mama, if I'm not there to help her with her pills? Because Sid had pulled Lorna aside as the older one. Liza is by now grown. She's on her own. She has her own career. Lorna was older than Joey, and Sid pulled her aside and showed her, this is a pill. These are the pills to get her up in the morning. This is how often she can have them throughout the day. And these are the pills to help her go to sleep at night. This is how many she can have. And Lorna was said to be petrified of what would happen to her mother if her mother was in charge of her pills herself. And I think we all know that that fear was not an exaggeration. In May of 1969, Judy arrived in London to begin a series of performances at the Talk of the Town nightclub. In March of 1969, that same year, Judy married her fifth husband, Mickey Deans. They had dated on and off for about 2.5, 3 years. And Mickey traveled with her to London. They had met in 1966 when Mickey Deans had delivered drugs to Judy's New York hotel room. And they had been together ever since. When they arrived in London, they rented a very, very, very modest home in London, and it was there. And then Judy continued her theater shows at night. Right, she was always off performing. She was extremely frail at this point. She was weighing 90 pounds. But she went and hit that stage every night to earn that money. And it was in that London home at 47 years old that Mickey found Judy dead from an accidental barbiturate overdose, June 22nd, 1969. Judy died destitute. She died owing millions and millions to the IRS. There was not even any money to pay for her funeral. Frank Sinatra stepped in and quietly paid Judy's funeral costs, which were $37,500. 20,000 people showed up in the streets of New York outside of the funeral home. And Frank Sinatra had her interred in a mausoleum in the Ferncliff Cemetery in New York. It's not where she's buried today. It's not where her remains are today. In 2017, Judy's children had their mother's remains moved from Ferncliff to Hollywood Forever Cemetery in California, where there is a Judy Garland pavilion. I know, Mary Lou, I could just cry. I'm trying so hard not to cry right now because it's just so sad. And it didn't need to be. And she's our Dorothy, right? It just makes me, just wrenches at my heart. We love you, Judy. We'll always love you. This is Judy's childhood home in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. It's now a museum. You can go there if you're ever in Grand Rapids and see her childhood home. Some pictures of it for you. We are wrapping our stream up, and I would love to go see this. I would love to go see Judy's home. Would love nothing more than that. It's there if you ever are in Minnesota. In 2005, there's 4 pairs of the ruby slippers in the world. And in 2005, one pair of those were, for the 4th time, they were on loan to the museum, and they were stolen. A thief used a hammer to break in and steal them. They were recovered by the FBI in 2018 and were later sold through Heritage Auctions in 2024 for $28 million, with fees, there's taxes and you have to pay the auction fees or whatever, came to $32.5 million, making them the most valuable piece of movie memorabilia ever auctioned. In the summer of, now let me tell you this, go to Minnesota and see her house, but you can also pop on over to Holland, Michigan, where in the summer of 2019, the Holland Oz project was completed. It's a free, permanent exhibit. It's available year-round. It includes this floral living mosaic book, a yellow brick road You see that yellow brick road there? And life-size bronze sculptures, including, look at that lion, so darn cute, including a 12.5-inch foot tall fighting tree. And there's our sweet, sweet Dorothy. It is a free outdoor exhibit located in Centennial Park, right near the Herrick District Library. And I hope one day I can go see it. We are at the end of our stream, and there is our beautiful Judy. How she could ever think she wasn't beautiful, I don't know. Over the course of her brief life, 47 years old, that's it. Judy made over 300 radio appearances between 1935 and the early 1950s. She made 34 feature films, including 27 for MGM, and made over 1,100 concert appearances during her career. Yet, this icon died destitute, owing the IRS millions and having millions embezzled from her managers. That is it, my dear friends. I hope that you enjoyed this. This was really a month of very, very focused research and finding these wonderful pictures of Judy. And I guess as tragic as her story is, I hope that wherever her soul or spirit is, I hope it's that she's smiling, knowing that no child actor or actress will ever be subjected to the things that she was. I just adore her, and I can still cry because I feel I feel a little close to her after doing so much research and learning so much about her. I think she was a good person. I think she was an outstanding mother, and I wish she'd had more of a chance, and I wish she had seen what the rest of us saw in her. So we're going to wrap it up. If you have any questions, I can try to answer them if there's anything that I've left out. But if not, I thank you all so much for being here, because this really is a tribute to Judy, right? We take no pleasure in the gossip or the pain or the incredible heartbreaking drama of her life. We take no pleasure in that. I think for me, a lot of that just makes her more precious to me. And I hope you feel the same way. So thank you all again for being here. Next month, Elizabeth Taylor. Yay, Elizabeth. And, well, I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm probably like, woof, who knows what I look like now? Some tears were coming down, right? They were coming down. If there's no questions, I'll let you go. Have a wonderful rest of your day or your evening, your afternoon, whatever it is. And I look so forward to seeing you guys for Elizabeth Taylor, and keep your eye out for the next poll. We can pick our next. I mean, I think we should carry on this series, don't you? You guys digging this old Hollywood series? I mean, it's just segment 1, but I love it. And I can't wait. I can't wait to get to know Elizabeth a little bit better with you guys. Okay? Bye-bye, my friends. Thank you again. I will see you somewhere over a rainbow.